Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm Ukrainian Canadian. Today is August 11th, 2024, and let's get to the news happening in Russia. And God, does it feel good to say in Russia, because Ukraine has brought the fight, the special military operation, to Russia. And the past 6 days, we really have been treated with some of the best, maneuver warfare that we've seen in recent times. And Ukraine has truly given us a masterclass of that. Pro-Russian Telegram channels, which are mostly the ones that are giving truthful information at this stage, tell that the Ukrainian army could have penetrated close to 40 kilometers within Kursk in the last 6 days. So in less than a week, Ukraine was able to really have a magnificent breakthrough within Kursk. And essentially what Ukraine is doing is that they're finding just the weak spots of Russian defenses, and they're just ambushing them, getting around them. If there's a well-defended area with Russian soldiers, instead of clashing head first, they just go around them, capture other settlements that are poorly defended, and then the Russians are encircled. This is the exact same thing that happened with Sudzha. A few days ago, the Ukrainians officially took the city of Sudzha, but before, in the first few days, there were still Russian soldiers, and there was still some defense there, and the Ukrainians didn't waste time, just attacking Sudzha. They went around it and they continued on. So you're seeing that the Ukrainians are also showcasing that they're very mobile right now, and the Russians are kind of this, hockey goalie trying to stop every puck that's being shot at them. They don't know where to go first, and they simply don't have a plan at this stage. Of course, as I said in my previous video on Friday, Russia will eventually be able to stabilize. So we need to be grounded. People saying that Ukraine somehow is going to go to Moscow or other oblasts, it's not going to happen. I seriously doubt it. I think this is just putting Ukraine on a much better negotiating position with Russia. I think that's very, it's common sense, right? We know that peace talks will eventually happen. And so this gives Ukraine a very big, fantastic lever on the negotiating table. And also the fact that Ukraine broke this illusion, I've talked about it in my previous videos, of this scary, unpenetrable Russia that nobody can attack, right? Russia's shown its total inability to protect its borders. And all it took is just a Ukrainian incursion of about, now people say it's between 10 to 40,000 Ukrainian soldiers that are taking part of this operation. Doesn't matter how many, but it showcases that the Ukrainians are able to beat Russia on their own turf. And this illusion is completely gone, right? It's 6 days. Russia was threatening left and right before this that they would strike Ukraine with nuclear weapons if Ukraine even dared to step in on Russian soil. And here we are, almost a week in, and Russia doesn't know how to respond here and tries to pretend that this is not a big deal. I'll talk about it in my next slide with the Kremlin reaction, which is very quiet right now and silent, which tells you a lot. Also, some good news today. You can see in the pictures below that the Ukrainian soldiers captured a platoon, about 50 to 60 Chechens, the TikTok battalion, as we call them. And a lot of Russian soldiers, the conscripts that were actually manning the border between Ukraine and Russia, said that the Akhmats and the TikTok battalion just fled as soon as they heard that the Ukrainians started the attack in Kursk, which is really, it's expected. We know that they're not combat ready and they're just there for show. But that's also helping the Ukrainians, that there's a lot of Russian forces right now that are unwilling to fight, and they're abandoning their posts very quickly. They're getting captured. They're just not motivated right now. And so Ukraine is also exploiting that to its advantage. Also, a lot of Ukrainian soldiers on Telegram are confirming as well that Russia started transferring some battalions and brigades from other front lines in occupied territory in Ukraine, that is Kharkiv. Some are saying that they're even considering to completely withdraw from Kharkiv, right? Another goodwill gesture by Russia. I wouldn't be surprised if they do that. Withdraw from Kharkiv completely, the northern Kharkiv sector, where they started their offensive back in May. Kherson as well, Pokrovsk, and other areas. So they're saying that obviously it's not all the forces, but some of them are being transferred as of right now. So this is good because it's easing off the pressure on these directions that are very difficult for the Ukrainians. And this is exactly something that I was saying in my video Friday, that this is also part of the strategies to force Russia to eventually transfer reserves and troops that they have committed on other front lines where they're having a momentum, breaking then their momentum, especially around the Chasiv Yar to Pokrovsk area where they're having some gains right now. So this is also excellent news. And another thing that we need to keep in mind, in the last few days, Russia started really pushing because they don't have any effective counteroffensive plans right now. So they're pushing a lot of old footage from previous combat operations that they've been doing in Ukraine as the current counteroffensive, right? And even Russia yesterday claimed that now they're doing a counter-terrorist operation, right? They don't want to admit that this is a war and they have been invaded by Ukraine. Now they're doing a CTO, a counter-terrorist operation in Kursk, Belgorod, Bryansk, and even in Belarus. Lukashenko stepped in that the great Belarusian military is stepping in as well and making sure to protect the borders. And we know what will happen if Belarus even decides to step foot in Ukraine. Its military would be obliterated in a matter of weeks by the Ukrainian forces. So overall, you're seeing that the Russian state, its regime, is unable to answer properly. We're a week in, they're unable to have a proper answer to this brilliant Ukrainian offensive. And they're scared, and they're really scared. There's panic, there's chaos. And also there's the Ukrainian sabotage and special forces that are deep within Kursk and other oblasts, really committed to do destabilizing operations deep in the Russian rear. So this is also another factor to keep in mind. But we need to keep ourselves grounded. Things, of course, are really advancing quickly right now, but they will eventually stop to a certain degree. We'll see where that line will be drawn, but this is fantastic gains by the Ukrainian military. Now let's talk about the Kremlin response. And so the Institute for the Study of War mentions, based on the last 6 days, that the Kremlin really is downplaying the scale of events in Kursk. And so apparently the Russian presidential administration advised the member parliaments and senators to avoid commenting on the situation in Kursk Oblast until further notice. However, Russian military bloggers, more specifically Telegram channels, are saying that the Kremlin should formally declare a war on Ukraine rather than their special military operation. And they've also criticized the decision to impose a counter-terrorist operation regime instead of declaring martial law. Of course, the declaration of martial law would have enabled the Russian authorities to implement more stringent measures, such as banning rallies and demonstrations, imposing curfews, and organizing the production of war-related products for the military. So you can see that the Kremlin is extremely afraid of calling things for what they are. Because for Putin to declare martial law is essentially admitting that he has failed to bring victory to the Russians. The Russians were completely happy and satisfied with what was going on in Ukraine. And, Putin did create this illusion that Russia was to win no matter what. But now that they're being invaded, Putin simply cannot admit that this is an invasion that has reversed, except now it's not in Ukraine, but on Russia. And so now, as we see, the Kremlin would rather pretend to say that this is just a setback. And even I believe yesterday on state media, a lot of them were saying, these propagandists, that, it's a setback. We'll get Kursk back in a matter of a month. I seriously doubt that in a month, the Russian military will be able to even take back 5 or 10% of the territory that was gained by the Ukrainian forces. The Ukrainian forces are digging in. They're reutilizing this Surovikin line that was built in Kursk. And also they've captured a massive amount of weaponry and ammunition from Kursk as well. So they're very, very well prepared and motivated. And this is a huge morale boost for Ukraine entirely. This is a huge win for Ukraine. The population is more motivated than ever. The Ukrainian military in occupied territory is motivated. We shouldn't forget that there's also battles, very difficult battles ongoing in Donbass, in south of Ukraine, around the Kherson region. Things are difficult everywhere, but this is a huge morale boost, which was needed for the Ukrainian military. For the last few months, it felt like, Ukraine was doomed and Russia would advance no matter what. But here, Ukraine dealt a massive blow against Russia, did something completely unexpected. And this is a massive win for Ukraine as well. And Putin fears to do a mobilization as well as a result of this, right? He knows that this could bring the opposite desired result. So he's not ready to mobilize unless I believe that things are extremely critical. which they are, which is surprising as well. Actually, this is very critical for Russia. They've lost close to 450 to 500 square kilometers already in Kursk, and they're set to lose more in the next few days as well. So the situation is critical, but this time it seems like Putin is not willing to commit to mobilization and pretends like nothing really massive is happening. So overall, all of this to say that because the Kremlin is so afraid of calling things for what they are, admitting the truth, this is only contributing to Ukraine's gains, and the Kremlin will continue making big mistakes. They're going to send convoys of armored vehicles towards Kursk, completely unprotected, telling them everything is fine, we have the Air Force functioning, everything is working, and then they get obliterated, like what we saw in Rilsk a few days ago, where the Ukrainians using the HIMARS. So for the next few weeks, this means that the Russians will lose more and more. Of course, eventually they'll stabilize, they'll learn from their mistakes, but right now the Kremlin is unwilling to admit the reality of things. And so this means that the Russian military will underestimate Ukraine's capabilities in Kursk. So overall, this is also very good news. And now I end things with kind of a sober note because it's unclear what's going on right now, but we know that the Ukrainian forces are very close to Enerhodar. Not Enerhodar, but the Kursk power plant, nuclear power plant. And we know that the Russians have been occupying the Enerhodar, the Ukrainian nuclear power plant, for the last 2 years in Zaporizhia. And so unfortunately, today the Ukrainians noticed that the Russians seem to have set fire to one of the cooling towers of the Enerhodar power plant in Zaporizhia. Some are saying that this is just the Russians igniting a pile of kind of rubber or tires at the base of the cooling tower to blackmail Ukraine, right? And they're probably trying to send a message to Ukraine that if you take Kursk, just wait what we can do. So unfortunately, you can see that the Russians are definitely using this as blackmail. So you guys can let me know if it's a good idea, if Ukraine has the ability to go towards the Kursk nuclear power plant and take it. Should they do it? Or do you think that that's going to hurt Ukraine? So I'm very eager to hear your opinion here. Of course, right now, based on the reports and sources from the Ukrainian military, they're mentioning that Ukraine is very close to the nuclear power plant, about 15 kilometers away, which is located near Kurchatov. And it's unclear exactly where the Ukrainians are, but about 15 to 20 kilometers. So if Ukraine has the ability to get there and take control of the nuclear power plant, do you think this is a good idea? They should be going for other areas. So let me know in the comments section, but unfortunately this is a little bit worrisome because we know that the Russians have blown up in the past key infrastructure in Ukraine, especially the Novakakhovka Dam, which then contributed to a massive ecocide in the south of Ukraine. Of course, now the territory has recovered more or less, but you know the Russians can be absolutely insane sometimes, and they can allow themselves to commit atrocities. So you guys can let me know in the comment section what you think about this situation, but that's the gist of the update for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. I really appreciate your support. Please guys, if you're interested in donating for the Ukraine cause, please donate. And the most important, which is something that I'm doing right now, is I'm donating the maximum amount I can towards the drone program. The FPV drones are doing great work in Russia and also in Ukraine, killing and eliminating Russian soldiers that are occupying and trying to destroy Ukraine. So please, if you have any money that you're willing to donate them to the Ukraine cause, whichever cause you want. So thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Slava Ukraini!